recognizes the ranking member for opening statement. I yield to the ranking member for an opening statement. I yield back.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Distinguished gentlelady from California, Mary Bono. Gentlelady is recognized.
Chair now recognizes
The lady from California is recognized.
I'm pleased to introduce Congresswoman Mary Bono, former U.S. Representative for California's Inland Empire and Desert Region from 1998 to 2013.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Hello and welcome to Sagely Speaking. Thank you for joining us again. I am so thrilled with this guest. Christine Brennan is somebody I've admired from afar for a long time. We've gotten to know each other a little bit over the years. She's an award-winning national sports columnist for USA Today. She has been named one of the country's top 10 sports columnists multiple times by the AP sports editors, and she's covered the last 21 Olympic Games, summer and winter. But what I like the best is she wrote her memoir, and she titled it, this came out in 2006, Best Seat in the House, which to me defines you, Christine. I think about you and I think, what an enviable job. Who wouldn't love to be you until you realize how much hard work that it really is? But you get the front row seat to all the best sporting events ever.
It's great to be with you. And I do. I feel sometimes in the press box, it's kind of up in the corner a little bit more now. They're moving us up. But, even at the Paris Olympics, you're in the press tribune and you're sitting right there watching Katie Ledecky win, someone I've covered since 2012, her first gold medal, watching the women's soccer team win that gold medal, watching the women's basketball team in the semifinals. It's priceless. And I feel so fortunate and so lucky to still be doing it at this point in my career. It's been a while. I've been doing it. My first Olympics, I'll leave it at this. My first Olympics was 1984 in Los Angeles. Now, I was in kindergarten when I started, but it's been a while. I'm so fortunate, lucky to get to do it. And also that title actually refers to sitting next to my dad at sporting events as well, because we had season tickets for Michigan football. Grew up in the suburbs of Toledo, Ohio, but that's only 45 minutes from Ann Arbor. And we would do Michigan games in the afternoon. Then we had season tickets for University of Toledo football at nights. We did double headers. And here I am, this girl growing up, loving sports. I'm tall. I'm 5'11" and a half. And all, at the time, the world was saying, no, you cannot play sports. You cannot love sports. You got to love dolls and whatever, which, by the way, of course, I had a full life of doing all kinds of great stuff as a kid with many friends, boys and girls. But, that was it. The world's saying no. Our country's saying not yet, no. And my mom and dad, especially my dad, they're saying yes. They're saying yes. I'm the oldest of four, Mary. It's not older brothers. It was my dad and me going to sporting events, and then the younger siblings coming along. And baseball games, whenever we'd go to Chicago to visit our grandparents, we'd go to a White Sox game. My dad was the Pied Piper with season tickets. And so if anyone wonders how this girl, now woman, grew up and became a sports journalist, there's no secret. It was that man who I was sitting next to for all those games, the best seat in the house as well. I was sitting next to my dad. So that was, I hope it's a story that resonates now with so many women and girls. But back then there were so few that were being told they could do it. And that's kind of sad. I run into women all the time, my age or a little bit older, a little bit younger, who say, I would have loved to have that kind of career. And that it makes me sad that they didn't have a chance because of not yet being welcomed into sports. But I was, thanks to my dad.
I love that story. I had a father very similarly. He was my world and just an amazing man. But you bring me back to the 1972 Olympics, actually, which was the Olga Korbut years, which is what inspired me to become an athlete. And to this day, I think I learned and benefited a lot from that mentally and physically. But prior to that, we didn't have Title IX, and women weren't encouraged to go into sports. And I was of this generation that, boom, the one you speak about, women can get into this. We had opportunity to play, field hockey, you name it, and we were constantly in sports. And I wonder, do you think we've squandered that a little bit? I think that young girls today don't have the same opportunity or the exhilaration or the appreciation that, wow, we can get out there and do these sports. And to me, it seems like we've lost that uniqueness and that specialness when it sort of burst on the scene, and suddenly we were all doing sports back around early 70s.
Yeah, well, I think, Title IX was signed by Richard Nixon in June of 1972. So we celebrated the 50th anniversary, now the 52nd anniversary of that law that changed the playing fields of America and opened the floodgates for girls and women to play sports. Think about it. For generations are national leaders. And of course, I know you've been in Congress and have been, leading in many ways in our country. Think of that for generations, they thought it was fine to only have 50% of our nation learn those life lessons, right? Because it's not just about being, a good athlete. It's about learning how to win, and even more important, learning how to learning how to lose at a young age, and teamwork and sportsmanship and leadership. All those things that we were prizing in our brothers and our grandfathers or grandsons and sons and nephews, but we weren't in our daughters and nieces and and moms and grandmothers, and now we are. So I think that's that huge change. I would say I think today I believe is the greatest day in women's sports until tomorrow. And then the next day and the next day. It truly is. And so I think people appreciate it. There's a lot of specialization now for girls, right? Where just like boys, just kind of stick to one sport or one or two sports. And there are lots of books, conversations on that, about what the impact on a young person's body to just do that one sport. I was a 6-sport athlete in high school. When I finally got to play sports, I couldn't get enough of it. And it wasn't because I was so good. It was because there was no need to specialize back then. So that was kind of cool, right? To be able to literally go from field hockey to the first doubles on the tennis match, running with our coach, Sandy Osterman, who's still around and fantastic. And she was coaching both sports. Of course, the boys had all assistant coaches and everything. So again, just the incredible lack of financial support for women in a place where everyone wanted their daughter to go to college, just like their son. Ottawa Hills High School. Ottawa Hills, a beautiful suburb outside of Toledo. But in sports, it was just it was the Gulf of Mexico in terms of different feelings and perceptions about what their sons should have versus what their daughters. But the 6-sport athlete. So in the fall, it was those two sports. And then winter, it was basketball and volleyball. Basketball was one of my big ones. And then I did track and field and softball in the spring. And again, it was only because no one cared enough about girls' sports to have them specialize, right? No one cared enough because there was no sense of there were starting to be scholarships, partial scholarships for girls and women back, in the mid to late 70s, but into the 80s. But so, I wasn't going to get one of those, which was fine. But there were the carrot was just there a little bit for parents to encourage their daughters because the college scholarship possibility was just starting. It explodes in the 80s, and it really explodes in the 90s and into this decade and into the century, in the first couple decades of our century. And, now, my goodness, if remember the days, I'm sure you do, when, and people listening might for sure watching, where, it was the old kind of, maybe old wives' tale or whatever, but where a couple would have a child, and the dad would, it would be a daughter, it'd be a girl, and the dad would be like, darn, I wanted a boy. I had a baseball mitt ready or something. I think those days are long gone.
Isn't it wonderful?
Because the dad goes, hey, great, it's a daughter. I got the baseball mitt ready. And that's where we are. And as you know, I'm working on a big book hopefully a big book on Caitlin Clark. And
yeah, tell us about that. How exciting. Another book.
Yeah, thanks. It just kind of happened. And I'm in Atlanta speaking to you. I just got off a plane from DC where I live. And I'm going to actually be at the, I'll date our interview here, but be at the Atlanta game tonight, the Indiana Fever at Atlanta, where they've moved it to the bigger NBA arena. And they figured it'll be a sellout. It might be the largest crowd, I think, in Georgia basketball history for a 22-year-old from Iowa.
So amazing.
It is terrific. It's just a great, great storyline. And, I just watched as a spectator. I wasn't covering either of the women's Final Fours where she was the star. I certainly went to a game with family. We just all bought tickets, no press pass. I just wanted to watch it at the University of Maryland when Iowa came to play it last February, just to see it, to see what this was. And, it was just, Caitlin Clark was just absolutely a stunning athlete for me to watch as someone who's covered sports for 40 plus years, to see this person out there on the court, this singular athlete. You can watch her come across the court, and she pulls up basically, just past half court at the logo, and fires a three and nails it in the first 15, 20 seconds of the game. And your jaw just drops. And I've been fortunate. I've seen a lot. I've probably seen everything, Super Bowls. I'm so lucky to have covered all the things that I have. And and I couldn't believe what I was watching. It's like, it's TV, it's great, but then you watch it in person, you watch her in person, you watch it, meaning the Caitlin Clark effect, the aura around her. And Iowa won that game, and our whole family, men, women, all of us, 10 of us, I think we had all of us together, was just, everyone was like, this is incredible. And it's kind of like you're going to a concert, and it might even be almost like a Taylor Swift concert in terms of just the excitement to get there. And then when it happens, and she's also, I would say, a little bit like the high wire act in the circus or that trapeze act where it's just breathtaking. And what is that? That's entertainment. Sports is entertainment now in our culture and our country. But what we often have not seen with women's sports, and we're seeing it more and more, to your point a little bit ago, we are totally seeing women dominating the Olympics for the U.S., winning by far the most gold medals, by far the most medals for the U.S. If the U.S. women were their own country, I reported on this in Paris and wrote all about it. If the U.S. women were their own country, they would be third in the medal count in Paris. And if you to the U.S. and China, the full U.S. team in China, and if you took the U.S. women out of the men's team, it would have been China and then the U.S. women. So that's how dominant our women athletes are. And so we are now seeing maybe we call it the awe factor for women, where it's kind of breathtaking. And those guys, we know those guys, we love those guys. Guys are kind of like, I'm not so sure about women's sports. I think I'll just watch the guys. A little bit of maybe sexism and misogyny rolled in there, or just being guys. I don't think women are good enough. Well, that's out the window now with Caitlin Clark and with Katie Ledecky and with Simone Biles and with so many other women. Serena Williams comes to mind. And of course, so many of these other WNBA stars that Caitlin Clark is bringing people to see with these eyeballs that are on her. And now they're seeing these great athletes. And so it truly is remarkable. But because of just this fascination, everyone's fascination with Caitlin Clark, I started covering the issues, writing about her, writing about the Olympic, what I call it the Olympic snub, when they didn't put her on the Olympic team. I broke that story, and I'll be dealing with that in the book for sure. The Olympic charters, that because of Caitlin Clark, they got charter flights for the entire, not the Olympic charters, the WNBA charters. Because of Caitlin Clark, they got the charters for the entire WNBA because she's so popular, and her security or whatever issues that you might have, as well as some of the WNBA players too. But it happened because of this year, because of Caitlin Clark coming into the WNBA, the TV ratings, the incredible attendance, the only person who sells out away games, Caitlin Clark, and everything that is encompassing this story that of Title IX, full blast. Caitlin was born in January of 2002. So earlier, what we talked about, if you were born in in the 70s, you got a good blast of it, the 80s. But now these young women born right at the turn of the century, it was just full throttle Title IX. You can be anything. You are just as good as your brother. Maybe you're better than your brother. We care about your sports just as much as your brothers, maybe even more. That was the family conversation in kitchens around America. And America, look what you got, Caitlin Clark. And that's pretty cool. So I'll be dealing with all that. The book will be out probably next June of 2025. I've got to get it done at the end of January. So I've got to work really quick.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be great. What an obvious choice, too, to write on, because she is brilliant. She transcends, she transcends the normal human athlete for sure, and you get to write about it. But you mentioned the Olympics. You're hot off of Paris. And before we get into specific events, just the Paris itself, I would assume it was a fantastic place to be, and the aura of Paris. And what was your overall experience with covering 21 games? Would you rank Paris high in the top 5, or where would you put that?
Oh, sure, Mary. I would put it right at number 1. It really was terrific. I mean, in terms of a visual feast, which I think is a great way to describe it, Donna Deverona, the Olympic gold medalist from 1964, actually told me that. I'm stealing it from her. And she said, fine, go ahead and steal it, but I'll give her credit. The visual feast that Paris gave to all viewers, extraordinary. And even for those of us there. So I went to beach volleyball one day, and you're just staring right at the Eiffel Tower. And of course, you got to have that picture to go on Instagram, which I did. And it was remarkable the way they use these incredible venues that we know so well, and tourists know, and just something that, out of the history books, out of everything that we've learned or been taught about France or about Europe, the Louvre, obviously all the various palaces and the residence for the kings and queens over the years, whatever. You had that. You had the Eiffel Tower. You had the Arc de Triomphe figuring in almost anything so close to the Eiffel Tower. The Seine River, of course, maybe the most famous river in the world. That was the scene for the opening ceremony, as everybody knows. So the French used President Macron said at a wonderful media reception that they had the Monday before the Olympics at his home at the presidential palace, right in the heart of Paris. And I actually met him and talked to him and to Brigitte Macron, his wife. They were great, and they wanted to talk to every journalist. They were just so pumped and so excited. Most American politicians, after a few minutes, like, okay, get these people away from me. No, they just like waded into the crowd of journalists from around the world. And again, it was at their home. It wasn't like we were on the street, but it was lovely and a beautiful party and a great celebration. And at that party that day, 4 days before the opening ceremony, Macron said, Paris is an open theater, another beautiful term. So they just nailed it. They nailed that. And I think in terms of just the beauty, the visual feast, as Donna Deverona said, and the opportunity for the world to see Paris so integrated with the Olympic Games and the Games so integrated with Paris, I think it has to be number one. The only thing I'd put even close to it is Sydney. I covered the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney, Australia, of course, another beautiful, beautiful city. And they had the triathlon the next morning after the opening ceremony. And to see the athletes swimming in Sydney Harbor as they went by the Sydney Opera House, that was pretty cool. But I think Paris, just because of its, we'll give it its longevity. Paris is as a part of our history for so many, many centuries. I think Paris wins on that one just slightly. And
so you've proven my point. What an enviable job. However, I'm sure it's not all glory and dinner with the president sort of events. It must be stressful for you to be an event, have to write an event, hit deadlines, identify controversy, wade through controversy. And I want to get into that a little bit later. I'd like to take this time to thank my incredible sponsors. Lucy Pet Foods is the leader in gut health. Their formulas for life feature prebiotic balanced fiber that nourishes your dog and cat's total health. Every purchase helps support the Lucy Pet Foundation, a 501c3 charity helping animals. Save 15% off your first order. Use the promo code SAGELYSPEAKING, all one word, and you'll also get free shipping at lucypetfoods.com. And the code word to enter to win our gift box is Lucy. Mothers Against Prescription Drug Abuse, driving solutions to prevent drug abuse and overdose deaths by focusing on prevention through education and awareness. All of our sponsors can be found on our website at sagelyspeaking.com. And now back to our interview. Again, just your experience as Christine Brennan at the Olympics. It sounds wonderful, but how high is your stress level at an Olympic venue?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't know that I've been asked that question when I'm asked and talking about it. So kudos to you on that one, because I think it's a great point. I am really running on all cylinders all the time. And this Olympics, I actually did get a fair amount of sleep. There were several nights where I caught up completely and got 7 or 8 hours. But because of my opportunity to have various employers, let's say, not only USA Today, but CNN, ABC News, so Good Morning America, and PBS NewsHour, as well as I do some NPR as well, although I didn't from this Olympics. Anyway, so for example, and you know this from your career where you've certainly done television work as well, so I said yes to a CNN show that was like a 5 in the afternoon because I work for them. So, okay, so I'm doing this and I'm talking sports, of course, sports and culture, what have you. So just a report on where we are with the Olympics, I think after the opening ceremony. And so that was it. That basically went to midnight Paris time. So from 5 to 6 Eastern, which is 6 hours, so different. So about midnight Paris. I go to sleep for 3 hours. And I said to Laura Coates that I would, I said, sure, I'll do your show at 11 at night, which of course is 5 in the morning. So, that's one where you go, Oh my gosh, I cannot believe I did this, but I know Laura well, I know her Booker well. Of course I said yes. So I did that a couple times. That's a tough turnaround, that 3 or 4 hours sleep, and then you get up, and of course, as you know, you got to be made up and ready to go, camera ready, while you're kind of still half asleep. But again, how fortunate am I? I'm not complaining at all. I loved it. I'm just kind of laughing at myself for saying yes to almost everything. So, I do that at the Olympics for those 2.5 weeks. I just go. And I'm really able to pace myself. And I because I've covered so many Olympics, I really do feel comfortable with that pace. It's not a pace I would keep up in my normal life. No way, no how. It's going to sound crazy, but if this is helpful, I drink a ton of water. I'm a major water person. I love sparkling water. I always am just drinking water like crazy. And I think that does help. I really do. I'm not an expert on that. I'm not a doctor, obviously. I have no idea. But I really felt refreshed even when I was exhausted. And so that's kind of weird. But, and I also, little tidbits, like there are times, I know it's Paris, but I also just did Beijing and Tokyo, which were, of course, COVID Olympics, which were very difficult. No restaurants. You had to just go hotel, either a car service that was within the Olympic family or the bus system, a shuttle, for the media. Then you went to the main press center, then you went to the venue, then you had to go back to and nothing else because of the COVID concern, especially with Beijing. And so you never knew exactly, like if you're going to a venue, would they have food? Because there were no spectators, right? So would you be able to have maybe they have sandwiches, maybe they don't. So I always say this, and people laugh at me, but you go to breakfast and you make lunch. Because as you know, I'm sure, with Europe, they have all these meats and cheeses, they have salad. Breakfast looks like a buffet that includes literally everything. So you while you're having your breakfast, you make a sandwich or two with all the meats, and you throw it in your backpack, and boy, oh boy, that has been my savior for many Olympic games. So, but yeah, you know what? I love it so much, and I'm running on adrenaline, and I just kind of want to suck the life out of it because as a girl growing up in Toledo, as you heard, loving sports, I would have hoped, Mary, to go to one Olympics someday as a fan. With my family, maybe just, buy tickets, as I'm thinking of this in the 80s, maybe someday down the road, somewhere. And to think that starting in 84 in LA, I have not missed an Olympics, winter or summer, all expenses paid, credential around my neck, interviewing Michael Phelps and Katie Ledecky as they're dripping wet, talking to the figure skaters as they're still breathing hard after their performance. In other words, the access is incredible. What would someone pay for that access? Again, it's my job, so I'm not, but I mean, if you put that on eBay, would people pay $250,000, $500,000? I don't even know. You can't, because it's a credential that's a secure credential. But the point I'm making is that I am just so fortunate to have this. And it's been now everyone since 84 in LA at summer and winter. So I really appreciate every second of it. I know maybe this sounds nauseating that I appreciate things so much, but I really do, because I think of that, 16, 18-year-old girl in Toledo watching the Olympics on TV. What would she have thought of this? Oh my goodness, I could burst out into tears. I won't, but I could, because it's just unbelievable dream come true stuff as a journalist, which is what I wanted to be, a writer, loving sports, loving journalism, putting it all together and still able to do it. I am, again, hey kids, dreams do come true. I'm here to tell you they definitely do.
Well, and in your career, from what it seems to me, you've earned so much respect from the athletes and from the readers too, or the watchers, the viewers. You have earned so much of this that you're right, put it on eBay, it's priceless. But you've earned every little bit of that. But I want to talk a little bit in the future about, in this show, about all the controversies in Paris. But before we go there, you and I must have just missed in 84 at the Olympics, because I didn't go, but I had just graduated that May from USC, which, as you know, a lot of the events are held at the Coliseum and in areas around there. But they put the fear of God in us, that you need to be gone because you will not have access. You won't be able to drive here. You're going to have to take, metro or whatever existed at that time in 84. So I didn't go. So you and I missed each other there. You went, and your career was built from then. But Paris certainly raised the bar to an extremely high level for Los Angeles. And of course, we have the Hollywood sign. We have a lot of wonderful museums and a lot of culture and history. And I'm certain that LA will clear that bar. However, Paris did raise it. But let's go to the controversy. So, as I was a gymnast as a child. You chose smart sports for your height. I chose a stupid sport. I'm 5'7". I don't know why, but at 72, we didn't know as a gymnast you shouldn't be 5'7". But in any event, gymnastics, women's gymnastics, is my favorite thing, and I was so heartbroken to see Jordan go through what she went through, and I was further heartbroken by the hatred pointed at her via social media. I think that a lot of your credibility, and I would say the appreciation athletes have for you, is that you really jump into something when you believe in it. And I know you wrote a lot about Jordan. And do you think this is going to happen again? Is it just inevitable with the Olympics, or can they get this fixed?
This was truly unfortunate. And I even was emailing the International Olympic Committee sources that I have in Paris on that, because the story was the controversy, of course, happened right away with the Romanian thinking she'd won. And then, of course, no, Jordan Childs has got the bronze. And then the beautiful photo, maybe you could argue, the most iconic photo of the Paris Olympics, with the first all black podium, gold, silver, bronze, ever in gymnastics. And Simone and Childs are bowing down to Andrade, as she, of course, has got her gold medal. And so the wonderful, great Brazilian, the terrific veteran. So, this moment in time. And then within a few days, of course, the Romanians are appealing, and they're saying the U.S. didn't get the appeal in time. It was more than a minute. And then, as what happened, and I was able to report this, you've got the Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is kind of the Supreme Court for international sport. And that's where all of the figure skating, Kamila Valieva stuff went, that finally resulted in the U.S. team getting the gold medal, as they did in Paris, a story I covered for 2.5 years and broke and was really on that. So the Court of Arbitration for Sport, I'm well aware of, and many people have heard of it. Well, they were not emailing the right email addresses to the U.S., according to the United States and officials. And so they weren't even finding out about the details of this appeal until it was too late to mount a great appeal. The U.S. had video showing that the appeal went in at 47 seconds, time-stamped, not 1 minute and 4 seconds. So the appeal was in time. Back and forth it goes. I'm sure all your listeners and viewers are well aware. What ends up happening is the Court of Arbitration for Sport says no, that the Romanian is the winner of the bronze, and of course that Childs is not. But by this point, Jordan Childs is actually in the United States with her bronze medal. So it's not like physically they're going to come down, and show up at her house. And if they do, what a disaster that would be. Public relations nightmare. But as I said, I was getting in touch with the International Olympic Committee. I said, why on earth would you want this to be the punctuation mark on these incredible Olympics, right? You've got everyone just in love with the Paris Games. It's been great. And now it descends into this chaos and controversy on the final weekend. And that's what they did. And I think you know this, Mary, but both the Romanians and the Americans said that it would be fine if they shared the medal, the bronze medal. And there was 2 bronze medals, and the International Gymnastics Federation, FIG, said no to that. Stunning. What a mistake. Because again, you give them both bronze. It's an unusual situation. It doesn't set a precedent. You're going to give out medals to everybody, participation medals. No. This was one situation, got mixed up, the timing, everything. And so you just give both bronze and you solve it. No, they didn't do that. And it just shows how completely out of touch these leaders, many of them much older guys, older than me, older than you, a lot of them Europeans, others from around the world, who just think they're royalty, or maybe they are royalty, I don't know, and some king or queen or princess down the line. And they just feel that they are untouchable. And this one exposed, I think, in many ways, just how, well, just use the term how screwed up international sport leadership is. If you didn't already know that from the figure skating fiasco or from so many others over the years, it's often involving Russian cheating, Russian doping, et cetera. And so that's where we are. And it's a shame. But Jordan Childs, I know she still has that bronze medal and she's not giving it back. But yeah, at this point, that's where it stands. And I was very happy to dive in and report. And because I've been around the Olympic movement for so long, I'm just fortunate to have sources who would get in touch with me and fill me in on what was going on. And so, we'll see how it plays out. Furthermore, there is that one, I'm sure people are wondering, is it over? The U.S. OPC and USA Gymnastics can actually appeal to above the Court of Arbitration for Sport, to the Swiss Supreme Court, the Swiss Federal Tribunal, and they look at procedural issues and technicalities. And boy, oh boy, are there procedural issues and technicalities in this one, as we know. And so I think there's a shot that Jordan Childs could get that medal, or they could decide. At this point, no one wants to take it from the Romanian. To just give them both bronze. So we'll see how it plays out. But what an unnecessary mess at the end of a terrific Olympic Games.
Absolutely. So sad to think that the real battle was in the courtroom or the boardroom and not on the Florex mat. And that's so sad. And I hope that this never, ever happens again. Both athletes were incredible. But again, back to the point on the women's sports, I don't know, what do you think is the highest rated? And I guess I could have Googled this or asked AI, but I'm going to ask you, better than AI. What is the most watched women's sports in the Olympics? Is it gymnastics?
Gymnastics usually is. Gymnastics in the summer and figure skating in the winter. That's certainly been over the years. I think viewing habits have changed, obviously, and people who are youngsters in their 20s, 30s, teenagers, 20s, 30s, who the Olympic movement is desperately trying to grab and say, hey, watch the games, which is why we're seeing all the avant-garde sports. We're seeing breakdancing, or breaking as they call it, and skateboarding and all of the X Games kind of things. It's because they're trying to attract younger people. They've got grandma and grandpa. They've got, anyone basically who grew up during the days as you and I did, watching ABC, watching the 72 Olympics, the horrors, of course, in Munich, as well as the beauty of Olga Korbut, the 76 games and Nadia and onward from there, Mary Lou Retton in 84, et cetera. But they really are trying to get younger people, because people are now looking on their social media. So that's a way to judge too who's watching, but it's not the traditional way. So I would say gymnastics, just because of the popularity, the names, the household names that come out of it. Certainly Simone is an example, Simone Biles, of the latest, and of course the greatest, and being around now for 3 Olympics for her. I think, swimming the first week is a big deal because it's just so many medals and races, and you can watch it live, and it's just, and track and field the second week, because it is that traditional Olympic sport. But yes, I would say gymnastics, figure skating would be the two that traditionally over the years have had the highest ratings. Tanya Nancy, which of course was off the charts, and I wrote a best-selling book on figure skating and a journalistic look at the sport, Inside Edge, after that, just because of the popularity. But that, just to give you a sense of what those ratings were, 1994, the short program in Lillehammer, Norway, I was there, I was covering it, when Tanya and Nancy skated against each other, as well as all these other competitors in the short program, got a 48.5 rating. What that means is that basically half the nation watched, and it was tape delayed. It was about 8 hours old. Everyone knew the result. They knew Nancy had won the short program. Tanya had not done that well. And yet they still watched 48.5 rating. I mean, the Super Bowl gets a 40. Wow. That's how big a deal figure skating was. Now, there are far fewer TV sets, so the number of viewers now is more. But in terms of a rating, it's the 6th highest rated show in television history. It will never be topped. Last Smash, Who Shot JR, Dallas, 1 episode of Roots, 2 Super Bowls involving the San Francisco 49ers, and short program at the Olympics involving Tanya and Nancy. So that's how big a deal figure skating has been at the Olympic Games.
You bring up something excellent. In politics, my consultant used to call it the hand of God, which would be the thing that happened that nobody expected. And obviously, Tanya and Nancy comes to mind. Munich, you mentioned, comes to mind. God, let's all hope there's nothing like that again in the future. But have there been other events like that, aside from like Jordan Childs and the scoring debacle, have there been other events when you've basically gone, holy crap, I can't believe this happened, and now I've got to cover this that has so little to do with actually the sports that are going on?
For sure. And actually this Olympics, the Jordan Childs thing, yes. But in general, there were very few of those at this Olympics. And I can judge it just from, if I'm, and I don't mean to make it, it's not about me at all, but just to give an answer, when I'm doing when I'm up all night doing television work, then, there's a big controversy, right? So I wasn't able to, other than those few times I mentioned, it was really, it was kind of mild. It was sports as it should be, which thank goodness for that. But in Beijing, the Kamila Valieva doping story, the Russians, and the doping, that story just exploded. I was able to break that story, and then it was nonstop for me. Again, fine. As a journalist, I think people sometimes wonder what makes us tick. And And I know people don't always love us. People don't always love me. You can just look at my Twitter, whatever. But it's like what is handed to you as a journalist is news. Like I don't pick the news, right? If there's a positive drug test, as there was with this, young teenager from Russia, Kamila Valieva, beautiful figure skater, I'm not rooting for that. I'm not rooting for that. I didn't even know about it. And then I get the scoop and I get a source that tells me, and it was true. And we were very cautious because she was so young and did not want to put her name in the headline at first. We'd wanted to see how it played out. And I was extra cautious with the information I was getting. I do think, and we all think of the people that we're talking about, even as it's an international, potentially a huge international story, which this was. But when something like that happens, well, it's my job to report it. So it's great to report great news, happy news. Katie Ledecky winning 2 more gold medals. What a role model she is. Spectacular. Simone Biles coming back the way she did. And of course, after the twisties and everything that happened in Tokyo and winning that all around individual gold. Incredible story. We love those stories. So that's great. When there is quote unquote bad news, we don't wish for it. We don't want it. We're human beings, but it happens. And that is our job. If it's great, we report on it. If it's terrible, we report on it. And so, that certainly has happened at many Olympic Games. I mean, here I am in Atlanta, going to the Caitlin Clark game tonight. And of course, I can't help but think of the 1996 Games in Atlanta. My hotel room window was right there at the Olympic Park. And I heard the bomb go off, Eric Rudolph's bomb that killed a woman named Alice Hawthorne, a mother with her daughter. Thankfully, the daughter was okay. And also a cameraman then died, a Turkish cameraman, as he was running to the scene. I guess he had a heart attack and had a medical emergency. So 2 people ended up dying. And I was looking out my window, and I was at the Washington Post then, and I was calling back to my editors and telling them what I saw from my window as an international incident came literally to outside my window. And that was horrifying. And the next day, I remember it rained here in Atlanta, and they had us talked about memorials, and it just was so depressing and so sad. And so I'm a journalist, I'm covering it, and I am going to go full speed ahead on covering it. And yet I don't think I slept that night. It was just an awful feeling that there'd been a bombing. And that at that point, I think we knew one person had lost their life. And then, of course, the cameraman, too. But this beautiful woman and this daughter, I hope she's okay. 1996 is a long time ago now. So, but you think of that. And so even as I'm covering a story, I'm thinking of it. So, that was a bad one. That was terrible. A lot of these scandals and things that happen at an Olympics, and I think people might say, well, why at the Olympics, right? Like, well, I mean, you had Deflategate with the Patriots. I mean, you have scandals at Super Bowls and other things too. But I think because it's the whole world there and it's this crucible, right? And for 16, 17 days, the entire world and all eyes and all cameras and all reporters are there or watching. And so I think that's why something that is minor or could be minor 2 weeks earlier or could be minor, just a little thing 2 weeks later, just explodes into a huge news story during the Olympic Games. And so often it's doping scandals, drug testing, or like judging controversies, which of course is what Jordan Childs was about, or, the French judge at the 2002 Salt Lake City Olympics. I was all over that one and broke that story as well. And, that was figure skating at its worst or best with just, craziness for about a week before they gave 2 gold medals. They gave a second gold medal to the Canadians as well as the Russians. So that was the precedent that they did not follow with Jordan Childs all those years later. So a lot of those over the years. And as I said, I jump in, even if it's not a happy story by any means, you jump in because you're a journalist and this is what you do. But I certainly enjoy writing about someone achieving great dreams and great feats, certainly as much as anything.
Oh, of course. Obviously, it must be hard to go from those great stories to such tragic events. And unfortunately, it's part of the world we live in these days. Any big event like this nowadays, like Taylor Swift concert being threatened and any mass public gathering, yet journalists like you go. And I'm thankful for that. And when I think of the Olympics, I think of you as synonymous with the Olympics. I would say caring for the athletes. I think that shows through so much. I guess, the old timer, Jim McKay, he was so amazing. A Wide World of Sports in 72. We weren't recording yet. I said that there's 2 universal languages in life, politics and sports. And I think if you were to ask anybody, if you could, that old adage, you start every dinner party with when you don't know how to talk. You say, well, who, if you could invite anybody to dinner, past, present, or future, who would it be? Christine, your name is probably among the top 50, 20, I don't know, because I'm sure people would love to hear your stories and get to know you. And my God, you are just a part of history. And I know I could talk to you for hours on end, and I'm sure people listening would love to hear more and more and more. And I hope we'll have you back, and I wish you the greatest of luck with your book. But you really are, in my opinion, a national treasure and a part of the American Olympic psyche. And I thank you for that, for your passion and your professionalism. So thank you for joining us on Sagely Speaking.
My goodness. Well, thank you. Thanks for those kind words, Mary. And a delight to be on with you. And let's do it again. Yes, there's a lot more we could talk about in this world of sports. But thanks again, and best of luck with the podcast, of course.
Thank you. So I want to thank my sponsors. Without your support, we couldn't be doing this, and I'd like to thank you for listening. So if you'd like to reach out to us, you can reach me at hello@sagelyspeaking. And until next time, be well.